We start today with some news about the embattled former Lieutenant General Andrew Leslie. Leslie is at the center of a growing controversy over the $72,000 he charged in moving expenses. Though the former Lieutenant General is entitled to his moving expenses according to the rules paid by the military, the Minister of Defense, Rob Nicholson, has questioned his judgment. Leslie believes, though, it's all a smear campaign because he's declared himself to be a Liberal. He advises Justin Trudeau, and word is he intends to run in the next election in Orleans. That's near Ottawa.
This is around, of course, what's called the Integrated Relocation Program. It's available to people in the military who have served for 20 years, their final move home. You've traveled all over the world, as Andrew Leslie did, 18 times around the world. You can then have the military, Department of National Defense, move for you to settle for the rest of your life after your retirement. In the case of Andrew Leslie, it cost more than $72,000. In the case of Andrew Leslie, he moved just a few streets away. This is the long list of other generals and brigadier generals who have done the similar things. The problem for Andrew Leslie is, A, he didn't move that far away, B, that he is closely aligned with Justin Trudeau and is going to be a big speaker at that convention on the weekend. So here's what Andrew Leslie had to say over the weekend. He said, quote, "I knew when I signed on to be an advisor to Justin Trudeau that I would be subject to partisan attacks and scrutiny, very different than other retired soldiers. I can take it. I have been shot at by real bullets. What is disappointing is that this particular attack may raise questions over a military retirement benefit, and I do not think veterans deserve to have another measure called into question," of course alluding to some of the cuts that the government has recently made to veteran services in different locations across the country. Now, the defense minister got involved, and that's pretty unusual, I think we would say, for him to get involved in a matter like this, not targeting the entire program, I should point out, just questioning what Andrew Leslie did. And here's what Rob Nicholson had to say. "These expense claims for Liberal Defense Advisor Andrew Leslie's in-city move appear grossly excessive, demonstrating a clear lack of judgment and Liberal sense of entitlement. That's why I've asked my department to review the policy to ensure the responsible use of taxpayers' dollars." You can see what the Conservatives are trying to do, try and paint the Liberals as a party of entitlement, and this is just another example, according to them.
Let's get some different perspectives on this now. Joining me now, the former Veterans Affairs Ombudsman Pat Strogan. Used to see Pat Strogan on this program a lot, and retired Colonel Michel Drapeau, who's also been on the program a lot. Gentlemen, thanks for being here. Okay, you know, a lot of people don't understand this. You're both veterans. You both moved many times in the military. What's your take? Bad judgment by Andrew Leslie, or simply availing himself of a hard-won benefit? Mr. Strogan.
Well, let me start off by saying I feel ill at ease here, because really it's like inviting George St. Pierre to come and comment on a professional fight between Hulk Hogan and Hitman Hart.
Right.
Because the politics, the reason why I'm here is I don't want this to turn into a political issue. The IRP is a good thing for troops. You know, I had many troops that served with me in Western Canada who joined from Newfoundland and Cape Breton Island. And they should, at the end of their tour, at the end of their commitment to the country, should be allowed to go back home where they were recruited.
For the integrated relocation
Absolutely.
program.
And I am not, you know, the generals are entitled to their entitlements. Was it an error in judgment? I can say personally, when I faced that very same question when I became the Veterans Ombudsman, my wife and I decided not to cash in on the benefit and trade up.
Why?
Because it might come back later on. There are troops who definitely need this support. There are troops today who are declaring personal bankruptcy because of the money they've lost in these moves. So from my point of view...
When you see a list of 13 generals who got between $72,000 and $6,000 for same city moves, what's your gut say?
Hugely distasteful. And if any one of those people ever aspired to get into the political realm, then they should be expected to account for that. But once again, you know, General Leslie, I grew up in the military with General Leslie. I'm already on the Liberal hate list here. I used to be the favorite of all the Liberals because it seemed like I was attacking Conservatives. Now I'm persona non grata amongst the Liberals. The veterans and the people in the Canadian Forces and the RCMP should understand that this is General Leslie. And if they think because he's a military person and he's being lauded onto the Trudeau train, that he's going to look out for their welfare when he didn't look out for Marcus Brower and the troops who are going bankrupt while he was collecting his $70,000, then, you know, you're putting your money on the wrong horse.
All right, so I want to get back to some of that. Strong words on General Leslie there. Michel Drapeau, what's your take on what he did? Judgment call or following the rules?
In either sense, I disagree with it. It's called a relocation policy. Relocation to me, and until this came across the airwaves on Saturday, I had never heard of somebody being reimbursed for his real estate fees and moving fees for moving within the city itself. I retired 20 years ago. And at that time, my understanding of the policy was if you wanted to go back to where you hail from or where you want to spend your retirement years, that's fine, you could move. But to move within a city itself, I never heard of it. And to this day, I don't care whether or not the policy allows for it, is it just and proper and moral, to use Pat's words, to be using this policy? Somebody is paying for it, that is you and I, the public.
So when you see, you know many of the men on this list.
I do.
You know these guys, General Leslie, Major General Day, Rear Admiral Greenwood, Brigadier General Rochette, Lieutenant General Lucas, Brigadier General Bigelow, Brigadier General Ward, Brigadier General Colbeau, Brigadier General Cluche, Brigadier General King, Brigadier General Labe.
If any one of those
Do you think they all showed bad judgment?
if they all move within the city,
They all moved within the city.
to trade up, not to relocate, to trade up. They were obviously, their retirement is here because that's where they wanted to be, and they move a second time within it. I don't see how it would fit in the policy, and if it does fit under the policy, and I think it does at the moment, the policy is wrong, and we need to amend it so that individuals, in fact, who don't move to a distant location ought not to be moving on the public dime into a trade-up or into another.
So you moved 15 times during your service?
Right. 15 or 16, yes.
Pat Stogren also moved the same. He says he didn't avail himself of this program. Did you use the integrated relocation program?
Absolutely not. It wouldn't even cross my mind because we thought for a while, should we go back to Quebec City where I was born or Montreal where our son resides, or are we going to stay here? The moment we decided to stay here, we went through a couple of times the suggestion we may trade up, but to me, to have the taxpayers pick up the cost, it wouldn't even cross my mind for doing so.
So, all right. Now, you know the politics. Pat Stogren, you said that you don't want this to be political too late. You know it's a political football, like it or not. Now, the General Leslie, he's saying now this is part of an attack on veterans' benefits. This is a benefit that they're trying to now attack. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I'm afraid it will turn into that, yes. No, this is a reflection on General Leslie and General Leslie alone. And he's chosen to go into public office. It's been in his blood for a long time. I know that for a fact. He should have exercised a little bit of discretion. As you mentioned, as I've mentioned, I had a chance to do it, and I thought it would be unseemly as the Veterans Ombudsman to be trading up and cashing in on it. I would have taken advantage of it in a heartbeat to move back to British Columbia. But this was where the work was, and the 3 years expired.
Okay, so if you had moved not in the same city, you would have taken advantage of it. But what will this have, Mr. Drapeau, any impact on veterans' benefits? There is some concern now that if you now utilize the integrated relocation program, suddenly it looks as if you are taking advantage.
I don't think so. If you relocate, but if you're going to be within the same city, why would anybody expect the public to pay for it? Really? If you want to relocate, you want to go back to Kingston, you want to go back to someplace else from Ottawa, I have no difficulty with. This is not what we're discussing here.
Evan, I have to emphasize here, the troops do not get ahead when they're posted, even with the IRP benefits. And I experienced it. You lose money on every move. If it's not cash on the barrelhead, you lose on real estate, your furniture gets destroyed, and you never make it back again.
So do you think, now the minister, Mr. Drapeau, is saying they'll review the program now. What effect will that have?
I don't think it has any effect upon, and I hope it would have no effect upon anybody who at their last place of duty doesn't correspond to where he or his family wants to retire to. So if he is in Ottawa and he wants to retire in Victoria or Newfoundland or whatever, that's fine. The policy would cover that, and I don't see any difficulties in there. I think Canada owe to the military who has served throughout his career and move about within Canada the opportunity, in fact, to go back to where he wants to retire. I have no difficulty with that. But within the city itself, whether that city happens to be Ottawa or any other cities, I have difficulty with that.
All right, so they may change it. Last word to you, Mr. Stogren. Again, they're saying it's, now, Leslie says political smear. He's done nothing wrong. It's a smear job because he's now becoming he's speaking at the Liberal convention. He's an advisor to Trudeau, and he likely will run as an MP. Smear job, or does he deserve to get what he's getting from the Minister of Defence?
Welcome to the game. You know, I had a minister say my actions were beyond the pale and said I was a liar when Thompson was denying that there were homeless veterans. That's the game. And you know, best of luck to General Leslie. I hope he proves me wrong and isn't as self-serving as a member of Parliament as he was as a general. And I hope that this benefit is not only not sacrificed because of the indiscretions of senior ranks, I hope it's enhanced so that Marcus Brower and the likes can get themselves out of bankruptcy.
You know, you're self-serving as a general, so is it more than just the integrated relocation program that you're talking about his career?
General Leslie did not say a word about the fight I took on for the veterans until he saddled his caboose up to the Trudeau train. And, you know, I had to fight General Mackenzie on the weekend, a staunch conservative, over his unfortunate cluster of suicides. Well, you know, the troops right now are suffering, and I'm at a point right now as an ex-professional military person where I firmly believe the general officers and the flag officers have let the rank and file down, and they should have a right to unionize and have some real representation to look after these issues for their behalf.
I only say I got to go, but today at the Supreme Court, I don't know if you watched, and we'll talk about this a bit, there was a case at the Supreme Court for the right for the RCMP to unionize. They're fighting for it. That was heard at the Supreme Court today, arguments all day, so it's interesting you bring that up for the military. All right, Pat Stogan and Michel Drapeau, always good to see both these two vets with their perspective on this, and you can see, never predict where anyone's going to come from on this issue because there's lots of different points of view, and I really appreciate the two of you coming on. Good to see both of you again here.